Hi there, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls. We have a tremendous wrestling card for you today here on All-Star Championship Wrestling, which, of course, features the world's greatest wrestlers.
My little itty-bitty bruiser buddies.
United States heavyweight champion from Brazil. The world's heavyweight champion from the AWA, Nick Bockwinkel.
The Midwest supporting, bruiser loving, positivity spreading, world's most dangerous podcast. Join former pro wrestler and promoter Dave Dynasty as he supports and promotes Midwest pro wrestling. Keep on growing with the Midwest Express. This is the Dave Dynasty Show.
Greetings and welcome to the Dave Dynasty Show. I am your host, Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining us. Yes, I am still alive. I apologize for the lateness of this episode. I'll tell you what, things have just been crazy hectic. I've been so busy, and unfortunately, the podcast has suffered a little because of that, and I do apologize, but we are back. We have a great episode for you today. We have an hour-long interview with Greg Carey, one of the leaders of Insanity Pro Wrestling. For those of us here in the Midwest, especially in Indiana, you will remember Insanity Pro Wrestling as a trend-setting, leading promotion in the area. And Greg tells all kinds of stories, and according to him, he hadn't even scratched the surface. So we will perhaps have Greg back in the future, do a part 2 with him. We've had, like I said, it's been very busy here lately. A couple weeks ago, Ike and I did the commentary, the streaming, from Muncie, Indiana for Delaware County Championship Wrestling. Man, I'm just stumbling over the words. And actually, it was in Portland, Indiana, this show for the Jay County Wrestling Club. Great event. Rikishi was there. Sifa Fatu was there. Lots of great talent. Madman Fulton was there. Saw some new champions crowned. Just a great show, a great crowd, very lively. We fully enjoyed ourselves. We appreciate everything that DCCW does there. We're very proud to be a part of that. And again, they return on June 22nd in Muncie, Indiana, for their follow-up show. More information coming on that. Ike and I will once again be there. Once again, been doing the live streaming and the commentary, but more details coming in the future on that event. So, let's go ahead. Let's just cut to a break and come back with that interview with Greg Carey, because, like I said, it's an hour long. We want to get right to it. It's going to be enjoyable. You're gonna love it. Lots of great stories there. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have that interview. So stick around. Hey, make sure you visit DaveDynasty.com. That is your central hub for everything within the world of the Dave Dynasty Show. From there, you can find links to follow us on all of our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube, which you will want to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have lots of classic wrestling, every episode of the podcast, and other exclusive features there. While you're at DaveDynasty.com, check out the links to help financially support the show. That is how we keep this free every week. You can go to PROWRESTLINGTEES.com/The Dave Dynasty and buy a shirt to help us out. PayPal.me/The Dave Dynasty to make a one-time financial contribution. Patreon.com/The Dave Dynasty to make ongoing monthly contributions. Or you can click our affiliate links for Amazon.com and HighSpots.com. No additional charge to you, but it helps us out. Thank you for your support, and check out DaveDynasty.com to complete your experience with The Dave Dynasty Show.
And welcome back to The Dave Dynasty Show. I'm Isaacs, and today we are joined with Greg Carey. How are we doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. As we get started, quick question.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
How much? Yeah, we never discussed pay. How much am I making for this?
Well, here's what we'll do.
That's a joke.
I was going to say, well, I have nothing in my pocket, so how about nothing?
All right.
No,
probably what my opinion is worth now.
Well, Dave Dynasty Show, your opinion is worth $1 million. But beyond that, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this. So for those who don't know, Greg Carey is known most very, very innovative promotion. But let's start with you telling us a little bit of your experiences with that with wrestling.
All right, that's going to go back a few years. I first got the quote-unquote bug for independent wrestling And a show I'd gone to, it was around my 23rd birthday, so we're talking ago. I had been dating someone, and after dinner we were discussing what to go do, and I said, all local promotion. I'd never been to an independent show before, and we drove around until we found it, walked in the middle of intermission. Thing I saw was some person I'd never heard of, calling himself Sarge, and immediately the music hits, and out comes Sabu and just completely destroys this guy. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Sabu in Indianapolis on a whatever night it was, and nobody knows. I mean, there's 150 people here tops, and I was hooked from then on. And Sarge, by the way, later became Roger Blade. So my first independent match was watching Roger Blade get mauled by Sabu. From that point there, I started attending Circle City Wrestling, and eventually started helping tear down the ring and put up chairs and everything, just continuing to pay to be to see the show, but wanting to help out. Right. And I did that until they eventually shut down the first time. And another small independent promotion opened up called Insane Wrestling Alliance, run by Kamala Jr. And I started helping with security, helping with the ring, helping sell concessions, basically anything. And they ran for a couple of years over on Raymond and Sherman, which is now a trucking school in that spot. Okay. But it got my foot in the door. I attended some training classes with Kamala Jr., learned I was not an athlete by any stretch of the means, but continued to try. IWA of that incarnation, not IW Mid-South, who was still running, shut down soon after, and then Circle City 2000 opened up, run by J.T. Branham and the Bouncer. And I'm sure there were other people involved. And once again, I was free help, tearing down rings, setting up rings, being security, anything to put in the door. But I also started attending training classes through Circle City Wrestling 2000, which I do believe this was in 1999, but yeah.
They jumped the gun.
The year 2000. What's that?
I said they jumped the gun a little bit on the name.
Yeah, could be, but I enjoyed the training. Once again, there was a young lady that I brought with me for the first training class or two, who later became the diva, Kelly Tabor. Okay. She's no longer with us, but she and I had a good, strong friendship, and I brought her there, introduced her to the people running those classes, but we eventually parted ways, and I say that we were friends. We were never anything more than that, but, we were good friends, and she went a certain direction training with Demi Kakilia of the Highlanders, and I continued to work with Circle City Wrestling, and then a young Rob Kincaid decided he was going to run a show. And he reached out to me and asked for my help. And I told him, I said, Rob, if I come will be used, I do it. And we ran the Lions. And we got my friend, who at the time was no knowledge of wrestling other than watching some WCW. He took pictures for the show so he could upload it to the internet for us. And that show came and went. It was not a great show. But my friend Mike said, we could do this again. And I was like, yeah. And I wrote out a show on the budget I could afford. And it was the worst abomination of a show you would ever think of, because I was thinking dollars and cents. Mike Williams looked at a piece of paper, and if he could have torn it up in front of me, he would have. He said, I am not attaching my name to this. I am not going to get involved in this. This is terrible. And I said, well, Mike, I'm just trying to use guys we can afford. He said, don't think that way, because no one's going to come see this show. And he was right. So the first Insanity Pro Wrestling show was actually technically a Tri-State Wrestling Alliance show. And we had a group of young guys who started out in their backyard by the name of Hilarious, who later became Drake Younger, and now Drake Wirtz, WWE NXT referee. We had diehard Dustin Lee. We had Dayton Suave and Vortex, who became Scotty Vortex, and other people. Tony Saturday Night, Simply Spectacular, Dave Davidson. We had Hillbilly Jed, the best big man I've ever seen, bar none, and a few other people. And we booked this first show, and I dare say it was really good. It was not amazing, but for what we could do, it went well. And we completely tore down the idea of the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance, because after that one show, we were not associated with Rob Kincaid. God rest his soul, I have nothing bad to say about Rob, but we were going a different direction. Right. And the main event for that show, originally, when we went booking talent, was going to be Mean Mitch Page against Corporal Robinson. Great guys. But when we went to that first show to book these guys, as Al Hay, the third business partner at the time, Diamond Dog, was over talking to Mitch Page and Corporal Robinson about coming into the show, I was over in the other corner talking to Colt Cabana and CM Punk. Mike Williams looked at me after I told him, hey, they said they'd come in for X amount of dollars. He goes, well, that's the match I want. Those guys can stay home. Right. And the main event of the very first Insanity Pro Wrestling show was Colt Cabana against CM Punk. And we were off and running at that point.
So, if you had said today, the main event of our show is going to be Colt Cabana versus CM Punk, I mean, that would have blown up everywhere. But obviously this was a little bit earlier in their careers, I would assume.
They were this was pre-Ring of Honor, right, but they were really starting to pick up. And this was at the Knights of Columbus Hall on Lyndhurst, on the kind of northwest side, sorry. And we ran there for maybe 2 years. But the first show was August of 2001, and I dare say a year later, because we were doing okay there, and because Ian Rotten saw a building in Indianapolis that was hosting wrestling, he would start running the week after us, and we held our own against them, which I'm proud of to say, that, he never outdrew us. But he did bring in Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio Jr., and many other big names. And whereas he did that, we brought in Madman Pondo and Necro Butcher, and because we did a lot of hardcore wrestling back then. But we were able to hold our own against Ian. And at this time, Indianapolis also had another group wrestling called Interstate Championship Wrestling. And they were our big competition at the time. They were running, and we would run the same night. So you had the choice of Insanity Pro Wrestling on Lyndhurst or Interstate Championship Wrestling over on Raymond and Sherman, and both groups were drawing 200 to 300 people. So in 2001 to 2003, there was some really good wrestling going on in Indianapolis. And that's where I say Kelly Tabor and I went our separate ways. She worked for ICW, whereas IPW, we weren't doing that. So JT Branham, Larry Wayne, and all those guys were over there. And they had a group of guys that, they had King of Pain, who later became Abyss. They had Wildcat Chris Harris, all these guys that did something significant. But then again, our young guys did something pretty significant themselves.
And that was actually
work our way.
Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead. I was just saying we did start to work our way away from the hardcore wrestling because you can only go so far with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually kind of leads me to something I actually kind of was curious about with IPW, because we kind of talked about, what you did before, how IPW started and everything in between. But with IPW, kind of like you said, definitely brought more of a modern style to the Midwest. Like you said, you had people like CM Punk and Colt Cabana on your show. So I guess something I'm curious about is, was it difficult to introduce this style and kind of make something different for the area? And was there like any kind of a reaction from maybe some of the older guys who maybe didn't agree with that new style?
The older guys, wait, let me give a lot of credit here to Mike Williams on this because he was the mastermind behind all this.
Okay.
At this point, he and I believe, were roommates. So many a night, if we weren't playing, Madden 2000 and talking about wrestling, we were just talking about wrestling. So I would throw out suggestions, and Mike would go, yeah, we're not going to do that. Or, yeah, that's a great idea. But it was Mike's baby. And to this day, when I talk to him, he does still keep notebooks of ideas, even though IPW has been gone since 2012. But we ran into a lot of the old guard who would throw out terms like spot monkeys or that's not wrestling. But we were filling the building up, and we were introducing young guys. And God bless his soul, I can't believe I forgot to mention him. We also brought in J.C. Bailey to Indianapolis for the first time in this era. Wow. We had a great run of IPW versus BBW, which was at the time JC's home promotion, run by his father, Joe Bailey, in Kentucky. And we had at the time, it was a pretty significant little run against them of J.C. Bailey, Simon Says, and whoever they brought with them against the IPW group of Drake Younger and Scotty Vortex and whoever. I mean, in Indianapolis at that time, we had the second time ever in the United States barefoot thumbtack match, which why anyone would ever do that, I don't know. And that was Scotty Vortex against J.C. Bailey. And they came to us with the match. They wanted to do it. And I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? But it was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I definitely would have some questions for somebody who'd willingly do a barefoot thumbtack match, which I don't think I've ever seen one of those that, now that you say that.
I wish I could tell you I had the footage of it. It got produced onto a DVD. I don't have a copy of it. There's so much stuff that I didn't keep copies of for myself that I wish I had. Right. And that was really in the infancy of IPW. Eventually, the building priced us out of wrestling there because every time the attendance would go up, it seems like the rent would go up a little bit more.
Right.
To the point where, like, we can't keep there. So we eventually moved to Mooresville, Indiana, and then Martinsville. And, well, before that, we moved to an indoor soccer arena that was only 2 miles away from the Knights of Columbus Hall, and our crowds went from 300 to 80. And I'm like, we're right down the street. Why didn't you follow us? And I never could figure out why. And at this period, we had begun a working relationship with American Kickboxer, we had worked it out to where he would come in and run training classes, and he trained Drake, Scotty, Die Hard, and Dayton Suave, and amongst a few others, and eventually working out with David Davidson, Apollo Star, and several others. And take credit for all that. Well, we did that. No, we just said, hey, building's here, ring's already set up, and those kids took advantage of it. We arranged it for them, but they did everything themselves. And I'm proud to say that it benefited them. And as far as training goes, he was a hell of a trainer. But when we had moved buildings, we had started up a working relationship with Cody Hawk and the Heartland Wrestling Association, or Alliance, I can't remember. It's an A word. And so we started bringing in guys like Drew, who developed a tag team with Apollo Star, and the Soul Shooters were born. They're still a tag team to this day. Guys like Chad Collier, Matt Stryker, and Nigel McGuinness came into IPW a few times. And, oh yeah, we had Nigel, I do not remember if he wrestled that friend, but Nigel was the nicest guy I'd ever met and a truly phenomenal talent, and I wish he were still wrestling to this day. But, not my choice.
Right. Yeah, that's a little bit out of our hands, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is what it is. And I tell you what, a guy that just never seemed to take off like I wish he would have, Chad Collier, I mean, he's wrestled in Japan and in Europe and all over the United States. He is such a phenomenal talent that I never could understand why he was not a bigger name. I mean, he wrestled in Ring of Honor, but what the glass ceiling was for him, I don't know. But I wish he would have done more because he was a great talent. We continued to work with Colt Cabana off and on throughout, and things were really good. And, of course, I got to be a manager in IPW, which was a lot of fun for me. It's really easy to make people dislike you, I found out.
Generally speaking, at least from what I've heard.
I mean,
Well, I was going to say, I mean, from what I've heard, of course, it's easier to make somebody hate you than to like you. I mean, especially in this industry.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you a funny story. We had a commissioner in IPW named Kenny Burns. Kenny had been a wrestler for a short amount of time and had a spinal and had partial paralysis on his legs after the injury. He walked with canes or crutches, depending, and had braces on his legs. But he still loved the business so much that he still wanted to be a part of it. And so he was our commissioner in the beginning. There was a wrestler that we were going to of Easy Cruise, and the idea was Dave Davidson and I were attacking Kenny Burns, and Cruz hits the ring to save him, turns around and blasts Kenny with the chair, and Kenny's busted wide open. He ended up having to get stitches for this one. And I kid you not, when we hit the partially paralyzed guy who could not walk on his own with a chair, busting him open, the crowd went quiet. And that's the scariest thing I've ever heard.
Right.
Because instead of them yelling and screaming at us, they said nothing. And as I got out of the ring to go to the back, 3 of the largest, scariest, ugliest old women I've ever seen in my life came at me. And I grabbed the security guard and put him between us to say, I don't know what happened to that security guard after that. But it was terrifying.
You were just like, I'm getting out of here. I don't care what happens. I don't want to see.
Those women were scary and large and ugly. Kind of smelled bad. I've had nightmares about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like some very good just nightmare fuel. I mean, and that's the thing too, is that it's great when a crowd is loud and getting all up in your business, but it's another thing when they go quiet.
It's only happened to me once where they went quiet, and that's when you know you're in trouble. Can't say enough about that one, and I've had people yell and scream, and I've had children call me names that most Marines wouldn't use, but that one was ugly.
So I guess on a slightly different note, because we've definitely gotten to talk a lot about some of the inner workings with with IPW and how kind of things came to be and some of the reactions you got. Bringing some people in and doing what you were doing. But in retrospect, kind of like you mentioned, you've used some Midwest guys that just kind of reads a who's who of current wrestling. Like you said, Cole Cabana, CM Punk, people like Jimmy Jacobs, Jon Moxley, the Chris brothers, Sami Callihan. And I mean, the list could go on for miles and miles and miles. And you definitely, it feels like, gave some people some opportunities to not necessarily break out, but to improve on names and to really become, large in life. But who surprised you the most? Was there anybody that you were maybe resistant to use at first, but at the end of the exceeding your expectations?
Well, one thing I don't like to say gave them opportunities. We gave them a platform, and they made the opportunities for themselves. Right. And I say that because I've heard way too many people take credit for the hard work other people have done. And sometimes the feeling I get was there have been people I thought should have gone farther than they did. But Jimmy Jacobs is one who I really don't understand why he's only gotten to a certain level, because I think as a mind goes, he's brilliant. And Aaron Williams is another who I wish would be noticed so he could make that next step, because the talent is there. Aaron is phenomenal. Dustin Reyes is the same. I don't know where the door is that they've got to walk through, but I wish it would open for them because they could take them with it. Right. But I don't know, because I remember looking at Jon Moxley, and he worked for IPW for a good 5 years. And I looked at Mike and said, that guy's going to make it. I would say Drake Wirtz is a guy who surprised me, but oddly enough, it's in a capacity that I didn't expect him to go in, because I knew that the talent and ability was there for him to make it to whatever level he chose to get to. I didn't expect it to be as a referee, but from what I hear, they utilize mind down in NXT as far as training and everything else, and he's really helping young guys move forward, not just as a referee, but as a trainer. Jason Harding, who became Jason Ayers in WWE as a referee, is another one that I don't want to say it surprised me, because the ability is a WWE referee on SmackDown, and I think he deserves every bit of success he's had. But, it's a funny story. You bring up Jon Moxley, but we had to fight to keep Jon Moxley at a level that we wanted him at, because at the time, IPW was run by myself, Mike Williams, and a third partner, who I'm just not going to divulge his name because it didn't end well, right? And the friendship didn't last through this. But at the time, Drake was our world champion. He had taken the championship to Europe, wrestling in Germany and a couple other places in Europe, I don't remember. And we were really proud of that, but Drake had been champion for about a year. And we all knew it was time for him to drop the title. And Mike and I both believed that Jon Moxley was the next guy, the heir apparent, so to speak.
Right.
And our third business partner did not like Jon for selfish reasons. And when we said, Jon should be the guy, he said, I don't think he's earned it. And Mike and I were like, what do you mean? He's like, I just don't think he deserves it. And we're like, this guy's going to be money. And he balked at us. And at the time, we all agreed that it had to be a three-way agreement on who the champion would be. We felt that we should all be in agreement. And because he didn't want this, we had to fight for several months. And finally, we just said, you know what? To hell with this agreement. We're putting the belt on Moxley. He's the best guy for it. And he was.
Right.
And I was proud that we stood up and made that happen. Because what a champion he was. And the matches that he had with Drake over that title, there was a dog collar match at one point that was just amazing. And there were a couple other matches. That's the one, and I think that can be seen on YouTube if you've never watched it. So
yeah, so I'll probably have to look that up because, I mean, like you said, I mean, even from an early time, like you said, Jon Moxley, or as people may know him now, Dean Ambrose, was going to make it places for sure.
Oh yeah,
and
I remember talking with Jon and him explaining to me when he had started going into this character of Jon Moxley, and him explaining to me what he was wanting out of it. And he would tell me, he's like, I'm kind of thinking a Brian Pillman-esque, kind of crazy, you look at a guy and you can see he's burning the candle at both ends, and you're just waiting to see what happens to him because you don't think he can keep it up. And I'm like, floored by him telling me this, because we were never real close. I mean, we would talk, but I'm 13 years older than he is, and there wasn't a lot of in common for us to become good friends, so to speak. So, but it was an interesting conversation. We would film promos with him in the back, and the hair on your arms would stand up, and you would get chills just at the interviews he would give. He was just that good, and you knew that he was going to be something. I mean, I've only ever seen two people and went, that guy's going to make it. And that was Jon Moxley and CM Punk. Everyone else, I never felt they were a surefire, can't-miss prospect like that.
Right.
So when I've seen them make it, I'm like, good for them. But those two, it was like, you would have to really screw up. Since then, I think I've only seen one other person that I think is a surefire bet. It hasn't happened yet, but I think Brian Pillman Jr. is a can't-miss prospect.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll wait and see, because he's only been wrestling for a couple of years right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Brian Pillman Jr., I would definitely say the same, because he was actually he was on the show a couple times. We were one of his, if not his first interview when he started training, actually, and for sure he's I would agree with you there. I think he'll eventually make it as long as he sticks with it.
Yeah, I mean, I've met Brian a handful of times, talked to him, and he is just, there is no entitlement, no ego. He is a great kid. So, I'm waiting to see what happens. Right. I remember when he'd had his first couple matches and I'd seen them, I had just sent an email to a friend who works down in Florida and just said, hey, when it comes up, this kid's got a great attitude. Now, he's still not been down there to try out or anything that I know of, but like I said, when it comes up, he's got a great attitude. He's somebody to watch.
Yeah, that's right. When it comes up, that's absolutely right. That's a good way to word it, I feel like, because hopefully that comes up. He's a good kid, like I said. But so I guess on again kind of a similar note, but slightly different. IPW, we've talked a lot about the road that it traveled, how it got created, its origins, some of the great people who you guys brought in and gave a platform to. And you guys ran for about 11 years and ran some, like I said, great shows with great talent. But I guess the big question, why did IPW end?
Honestly, I got married, Mike got married, we started families, and IPW couldn't be our baby anymore. By this point, at the end, we had taken on another partner. His name's David, and he's a great guy. But when Mike decided he had to step away and concentrate on his family, David and I ran a couple of shows after that, and we couldn't do it without Mike. Right. Because it was time. Not that Mike was the glue that held us together, but maybe he was. But things had changed. Talent had moved. Can't believe we've gone this long without talking about Ricochet. Right. But, I'm just thinking about all the talent that's come through. We have not mentioned Ricochet.
Honestly, I didn't even, because, I obviously wasn't. I was around, but I wasn't really, when you guys were around, I don't think I ever heard of you guys until more recently when I started doing research about your promotion, which is crazy considering the amount of talent. So, you said you had Ricochet at one point?
We had Ricochet as a 16-year-old kid whose mother came with him to the first show to let us know we had her permission for him to wrestle. And at the time, Ricochet maybe weighed $140. I mean, skinny little kid who could do amazing things. And Dave Christ decided he was going to take Ricochet under his wing and teach him to wrestle. And they had a series of matches that was nothing short of spectacular. And Dave got a little snug with Ricochet a couple times. But it was a great learning experience for him. But Ricochet gets up to the top rope, hits a double moonsault. He doesn't do this move anymore because I swear it looks like he's going to break his neck every time. Right. But landed knees first into Dave Christ's groin. And no one noticed but us in the back. Had a video monitor back there. Right. And to this day, we still talk about this. Because he straight up, it's just hilarious. I'm cracking up thinking about it because he kneed him right in the balls on a double moonsault. I mean, the pain had to have been excruciating.
I would have been like, this is the time where we saw both of them burst. No.
Yeah, it was. And, yeah. But no, as far as your first question, because we've gotten off subject because I do that a lot. IPW ended because it was time to end. I've had so many people over the years ask me if we were ever going to come back. And I always say never say never. Right. And I've had people beg me to let them use the name, and I won't do it because if you don't have, then it's not going to be it. And I always tell them, don't try and do what we did. Do what you can do now. Make something new. Don't try to. And there are some people doing that, and I'm proud of them. Man, you've got me going down memory lane, though, and all the people that have come through. And we talk about Ricochet because Ricochet, Chuck Taylor, Hex Gage, and a gentleman by the name of Kai. I don't know if he ever really wrestled much after that. Hex Gage was really good, but he didn't really he didn't have the desire to go out and wrestle as much. But Chuck Taylor and Ricochet were part of IPW for several years. And now, of course, Chuck Taylor is in AEW with Trent Beretta, I believe. And so when that starts up, and more power to him, Chuck Taylor, great guy. And they had several great matches against each other, and then Ricochet went off on his own. And then, of course, we had Davey Richards come into IPW. And he was a talent. We had a show once. Davey wasn't booked on. But he called us and said, look, I'm an hour away, and I just walked into this show I'm booked on, and they have garden hose for ring ropes. Could you use me? And we went, yeah, get over here. I don't even remember what the match we put him in was, but we got him there and had a great match with him. And Davey Richards, I've always heard that he was, he ended up with a weird reputation, but he always right by us. And so I always ignore the people when they say that. So at one point we had Irish Airborne, Dave and Jake Christ against the American Wolves, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards. And what a match that was.
I imagine.
We had the Kings of Wrestling, Cesaro and Chris Hero or Cassius Ono against Irish Airborne. Again, the only time I ever know of that match happening was in IPW. And what an amazing match that was. But now, financially speaking, IPW just got to be too much to keep going at the level we wanted it to be at. 2012, when we stopped, the economy was not like it is right now. And so, people just didn't have disposable income to go to wrestling shows every month.
Right, I imagine so. That was kind of the era of, we're all kind of without money right now. That was right after the recession of 2008, so I'm very not surprised with that, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't regret closing down because it gives me more time to spend with my wife and son. My son's 12 now, so, and every now and then I get to thinking, like, man, it would be nice if we could. But, there are other young groups of young guys doing their own thing now, and I'm like, do I really want to compete with all that? So.
No, understandable, especially now, like you said. But I definitely feel like if you guys were to come back, I feel like that could be potentially great, especially with the wonderful talent that we have these days. But let me ask you this. Because like you said, you've been asked if, hey, are you guys going to start back on? Like you said, never say never. But have you ever had, I guess, the urge to jump back in yourself? Have you ever said to yourself, man, I would love to do this? Or has there ever been a moment where you got close to maybe starting back up?
Not IPW. I worked for other promotions as manager. I worked for NWA Circle City Wrestling when they ran, and I had talked to Rob Kincaid and said, look, I want you to put me with some young guy who needs somebody that can talk for them and help them learn how to do this. And his very first show, he put me with Shane Douglas. I was like, wait a minute. I said I want a young guy that can't talk. How the heck is Shane Douglas a young guy that can't talk? I said, what am I supposed to do? So then after that, they put me with Baron Von Kane, which he is a wonderful person. Didn't always fit what I was trying to do, but, we had fun with it. And then I did some work for WCW as a commissioner. But, I think, in all honesty, my heart will always be with IPW, and it just didn't feel right doing, working with anything that wasn't IPW. But I also, in October of 2017 and in April of 2018, had 2 separate neck surgeries. I had a spinal fusion on my C6 and 7 vertebrae. and then went back in and had C4 and 5, 6 views. So I'm fine now. But I just don't trust getting out there and being a manager now because, who knows what could happen.
Right.
So.
You're, definitely with any injury in this business, it's one of those things where you're one bad bump away from making it something worse.
Exactly. But it's usually on nights like tonight where I talk about it that I go, man, that would be great. And I think about the talent that's out there. Boy, it'd be great to work with this guy, that guy, or whatever. Because when we were running in the front row of every show the last 5 or 6 years was a young kid who eventually became Sage Phillips. And he's tearing it up on the Midwest now.
Yeah, I'm going to say Sage Phillips he's a fantastic talent. I've actually had the pleasure of talking to him about either a year or two ago, and yeah, I mean he's just killing it. He's pretty great, I will say.
Yeah, and this kid used to drive us nuts as far as emails and questions and everything else. But what a trooper! And he eventually went to Billy Rock's School of Rock, and I'm telling you, Billy worked miracles in that school. Some of the guys that came out of that school, I'm like, there's no way this guy's going to be any good. And they were phenomenal. Trip Cassidy's another one who was a kid in the front row every show. And now look at him. And, he might be the one when you talk about anybody that's exceeded my expectations. Trip Cassidy definitely has exceeded my expectations. Wow. And I'm proud of that kid. Because when I first saw him, I looked at him and went, not going to make it. He's not an athlete. He's not. At the time, he was just a goofy kid. He's not charismatic. And boy, was I wrong. And I am so proud I was wrong. Because he's great.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of seeing him wrestle a couple times, and he is. Yeah, that's another great one as well. And glad to see that he exceeded those expectations for sure.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because around that time when he first started training, we were still running. And he started bringing this young girl with him to shows. And I found out we only ever used her on one show. But that turned out to be Ruby Riott. And I'm like, wait, she was only on one show? And I believe it was our last show. And my partner Dave told me, he's like, yeah, only one. I was like, but she was coming around for months. Why weren't we using her? I don't know.
That's wild. And there's another one to add to the list.
Yeah, I mean, if we start counting people who just worked 1 or 2 shows, yeah, Seth Rollins worked for us twice. I went through one time and counted all the people who have been signed to WWE, Japan, Ring of Honor, and Impact, and it's amazing how many there are. But if you start counting the one-offs, Michael Elgin worked for us once. And he's amazing now. He was good then, but
he's
just amazing to me.
Yeah, so he's above the rest now, for sure.
Yeah. So, but, and the thing is, the guys that have made it aren't always the guys I look back on as being my favorite matches. Very well could be my favorite IPW match would be Tarek the Legend against Dave Christ. They were on one of our June heavyweight tournament matches, and they tore down the house. And at the time, Tarek was in his 40s, and just his career was winding down, but Dave was in his prime. Right. And the level of trust and respect they had for each other, they had a match that would hold up against anything you could see today.
It's all, oftentimes it's those matches like that you almost don't expect to be good in some respect, but they ended up 100% blowing you out of the water.
Oh, yes. And I failed to talk about a gentleman who was probably my favorite person ever to manage, and that would be James Avery, who wrestled as Carlton Kaz for us. And we were part of a group that I had managed called Council of Champions, which I still maintain is one of the greatest heel stable names ever. But we'd had a match with Scotty Vortex, and it was advertised as a thumbtack death match. And we came out to the ring, and as I pointed out on the poster, it said, thumbtack death match. We worked the entire match around one thumbtack in the ring.
So let me ask, you said one thumbtack as in just like a singular thumbtack that was inside the ring?
In the middle of the ring. And they worked that until finally, Scotty did whatever, found a bag of thumbtacks under the ring, and then, that was the end of the match. But for the bulk of the match, there was literally one thumbtack in the middle of the ring, and I can remember at least once or twice the thumbtack fell over, and I made the referee stop the match and put the thumbtack back up to where it was pointy side up. And the crowd ate it up.
See, and that's another thing too, is that you those little tiny silly things like that. That's what gets the crowds into it, and that's what people love. They love those little goofy one-off situations. I tell you, it's always those little small things. I swear.
Yes.
So I guess
I'm sure we're coming close to time on this, but
no, it's great. I love these stories because I always love those like kind of like you said, like those one-off scenarios where, oh yeah, I remember this one time when, but something I'm curious about. I actually kind of mentioned this a little bit, so I'm not sure where we're going to go with that, but with IPW having been in action, going on, you said you guys ended in 2012, so that was 7 years ago that you guys...
November of 2012.
So almost 7 years ago, you guys stopped running. Are there IPW, is there any film of IPW, maybe DVDs or downloads that are out there?
Yeah, there are still DVDs for sale on Smart Mark Video. I know the DVD of it might have been Reign of the Insane, where Daniel Bryan wrestled younger. And this was literally, I'm sure you remember when Daniel Bryan was fired from WWE for choking Justin Roberts with his tie. Correct?
Yeah, I do recall that.
Okay. He'd been fired, so he took independent bookings. And we had booked him for a show in the summer. And then I wasn't watching the pay-per-view, but SummerSlam comes on, and SummerSlam's on Sunday. Our show is Saturday, so 6 days away.
Right.
I get a phone call going, oh crap, Greg, Daniel Bryan's back in WWE. And I'm like, what? Because we've already wired him his deposit, or we've paid it. We bought the plane ticket, we've reserved the hotel, and the very next morning he calls us and says, don't worry, they're letting me finish out my bookings, I will be there. And we're like, thank God. Because that was the biggest show we ever had. I can't tell you attendance numbers because, well, everybody lies about those anyway. So there were 7,000 people there.
Right.
Not really. But it was a big show for us, and it was a lot of money up front, out of pocket on that. So it made us feel good that he called us the very next morning after returning to WWE and let us know, hey, I'll be there next week, don't worry, because it was a little scary. And we had to assure everybody that we're to the show, he was still going to be there. Because that could have potentially killed the draw if they thought, well, he's not going to be there now. Why would we do it? And I remember the build-up to that show because we had worked out a deal with HWA where they would pay part of his travel, and they would book him on the Friday night, and we'd book him on the Saturday night, and then he had another booking on Sunday. I don't remember where. It wasn't with us. And the obvious match would have been Jon Moxley versus Daniel Bryan. Wouldn't you think?
Right, absolutely.
Well, HWA was having it the night before. And I really didn't want to do part 2 for IPW because I didn't feel like IPW should ever be anybody's part 2.
Right.
And I truly believed in Drake Younger. I knew how good he was. I knew he was passionate and loved this business. And I talked to Mike about it because Mike's like, well, I guess we'll do John versus, Daniel night 2. And I said, don't do that. He's like, given everything for this business. He's always been a team player. He's never given us attitude. I said, he's the guy. He should get that marquee match.
Right.
And Mike agreed with it. I told him, and I have a vision for this match. I'm never going to go in and tell a bunch of guys, hey, I want you to do this and then this and then this and then this. I mean, that's not my place. They're the wrestlers. But I said, I want Rocky. And Mike said, what do you mean? I said, well, if you look at the Rocky movie, the original, Rocky Balboa should not have ever been able to stand toe-to-toe with Apollo Creed. Apollo was a more proficient boxer. He was more talented. He outclassed Rocky in every aspect of the game.
Right.
But Rocky had heart. I said, and I want Drake to go out there and wrestle that match and show everyone that he's got the heart, that no matter what, he could stand toe-to-toe with somebody who at the time was considered the best in the world, and he did. And they worked the match that way. And I asked for Rocky, and somewhere along the way, they missed the message and gave me Rocky 2, because somehow Drake won the match, which was not supposed to happen. And we looked at Daniel Bryan after the match and said, is this going to get you in trouble? He goes, I don't know, maybe. He didn't care. Right. Because what happened was there was a mix-up because the entire crowd was standing, and the ref counts 1, 2, there was a kick-out, and then, they doing the quick pins and everything. And then he counted the next pin attempt, but they were so back-to-the-back that you could hear the hand slap 1, 2, 3, even though it was 1, 2, and then 1. And so the timekeeper rang the bell. And like, that's not the finish. So they restarted the match, and Daniel told Drake, go for a moonsault, and he let Drake pin him. Because he said it made more sense than him beating Drake twice in one match.
Right.
And that was the most unselfish thing I've ever seen in this business, because here's a contracted WWE superstar putting over some kid on an independent show. That's
insane too, because like you said, you're like, are you going to get in trouble for this? I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, could be. And he was a great guy because we drove him around to Ohio, back from Ohio, and all that. And he's a quirky, funny guy. You wouldn't know it, but he's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, I've always heard that because I cannot remember who it was I talked to. But they had said that they had worked with him, way a long time ago, and that he was just kind of an all-around fun, goofy dude. So I definitely had before.
Yeah. If you ever get the chance, look up or try to find info. Of course, like I said, it's on Smart Mark Video, but
right.
IPW used to be the premier place for junior heavyweight wrestling. Every year we would hold our junior heavyweight tournaments. And those were some amazing shows. Of course, we've had guys like B-Boy coming back, Russ from CZW, Mike Quackenbush, Ricochet won it once, I believe.
Right.
Dave Christ won twice. The only guy to ever win it twice. And Seth Rollins was in it. Evan Bourne, Matt Seidel was in one. Chuck Taylor It's just so many great guys were in these different tournaments. It was amazing, and we ran those from really the first show, or not first show, but the first year or two we ran junior tournaments. And I dare say those would hold up against anything today as far as the high-flying matches you see today. Right. I'm trying to think of, I mean, the formats of tournaments changed over the years, but man, they were good. Mike Quackenbush against Billy Rock, one of the greatest matches we ever had in IPW. If you get a chance to find that footage of that, please do. Billy Rock against Sammy Callahan was another phenomenal match. I think that was the final of one of the junior heavyweight tournaments. It was, and Billy Rock won that one, I believe. So Billy Rock's another one of those guys, that phenomenally talented guy. I don't know. Just should have gotten farther than he did, but, you know, that's just how it happens sometimes.
Right.
And, of course, once again, just tooting my own horn and thinking about what we did, what Mike did as a booker. We had Apollo Crews come into IPW before he blew up. He worked, I think, 2 shows for us. A.R. Fox flew him in from Georgia to Indianapolis to work for IPW. I was like, why are you doing this? Like, I got miles saved up. I'm like, okay. So, because we didn't reimburse him for that travel. I mean, we'd give guys gas money, but I'm not paying for your flight.
Right. You're just like, look, man, I'll give you some. I'll throw you a 20 for gas, but I ain't paying that however many $100 for a plane ticket.
Yeah. And that's the thing. After having run for 11 years, almost 12, so many people came through that door. I really feel like I'm neglecting to mention some amazing people. Congo Kong was a part of IPW for several years. And he's another talent that just, I'm so glad to see him succeeding right now. Before I finish, I have a fun story to tell you.
No, go for it.
And this is the story of the Dirty Squirrel. And this is what happens when people who should not get into the ring, basically. We were running, and we very rarely ever did battle royals in IPW because we don't like them. They're filler.
Right.
But on the only memorable battle royal we ever ran, for some reason, someone talked us into letting their friend be in the battle royal. And he decided he was going to call himself the Dirty Squirrel. Yeah. He was in the back texting his girlfriend about all the people in the back. And at the time Dave Chris out with an injury, he had knee surgery, and he was making his surprise return that night. And somebody caught the Dirty Squirrel texting his girlfriend telling her, Dave Christ is here. Well, even when Dave Christ was out with his injury, he came to the shows and hung out. I mean, you know, his brother was there, and he was a good friend of the promotion. I mean, so it was no big deal for Dave to be seen in the back. But he's telling her, he's wrestling tonight and all this. He's giving away something that wasn't meant to be a secret. So he gets into the ring for the Battle Royal in his karate pants and his Santo mask on that he got off of High Spots or somewhere else, I don't know. And he wrestles in there, if you want to call it that. Well, the boys had all found out about what he'd done. And they proceed to chop the hell out of this kid to where his chest was purple. And they throw him out, and he goes to the back, and he's talking all big. He's like, they got to respect me now. I did that and whatever. And I'm out over there with Congo Kong, who at the time wrestled as Osiris. And I said, you know what would really make him respect you? What? If you go back out and get back in the ring. Oh, no. And Congo's like, yeah, you got to really show it. So he's like, okay. And I go, Kong, carry him out there. So Kong throws him over his shoulder like he's dragging him, carries him to the ring, throws him back over the top rope, and the boys smell blood at this point. And they're like, oh, my goodness, they brought us a treat. So they go back to town again. They're chopping the hell out of this kid. And our commissioner at the time, Diamond Dan Garza, I love Dan. He's a great guy. I'm over there talking with Mike. Is this going on? And Dan looks at Mike and goes, can I get in there and chop him? Mike goes, why not? And so Dan jumps in the ring. I don't know if you know Dan Garza, do you?
Yes, he's a good friend of the show.
Okay. Well, Dan throws some of the hardest chops I've ever heard or felt. So he jumps in the ring, and he proceeds to light this kid up. And then he jumps out of the ring. When someone out there has pictures of the Dirty Squirrel's chest after that, I believe Big Sue Jackson does. So, Sue, if you're ever listening to this, post them again. His chest was not red. It wasn't purple. That's how bad it was.
Good Lord.
But he learned, and I think we all respected him after that.
Right. Respected him, question mark.
Yeah. I mean, we abused that kid that night.
Right.
I didn't. I wasn't in the ring. I didn't hit him. And nobody punched him, kicked him. They just chopped him. But have you ever been chopped?
So I've been chopped by Dave once, and that is enough to teach me that I never want to be chopped again.
Yeah. So you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dave's always told me stories, because back when he used to wrestle, about all these people who he'd give chops from and this, that, and the other. And the name that always pops up when he talks about chops is Bo over here. That's the one that he always says.
Bo is one of the best or worst, depending how you look at it.
Right.
So, yeah. I had a few people who give Bo a run for it. I do believe Dan Garza is one of them. TJ Kemp being another. So, yeah. It was brutal.
I imagine. I'm curious now. I want to see the picture of this guy's chest. So he's got those. Definitely send those Dave's way.
Like I said, I know Sue Jackson. He has them. And maybe Dan Garza even has it. So you might ask Dan.
I might. I think I have Dan on Facebook. I might do that.
Yeah. Yeah, if I weren't on my phone right now, I would try and see if I could find it, because it's bad.
It's bad, but it's good, but it's bad.
Yes.
So I guess one last thing for you, because before we wrap up, obviously I know, like you said, that you don't do the promoting anymore, and you don't do the managing anymore. But do you have a social media or a way that fans may be able to keep in touch with you, or maybe see what you're up to these days?
I am on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm actually friends with Dave Dynasty, by Greg and Christine Carey. I do a lot of things as far as my social media is my own private one. It's not so much for everyone. I'm very political, so my politics may offend some people because I am a conservative, and some people don't like. Apologize for it. So, be that may, if you ever see my social media and I offend you, sorry. It's just how I see things. Right. I'm also very involved in the special needs community because my son is autistic, and so I'm very involved in that. That's kind of where my energies go nowadays. So I'm very involved with a group called Victory Lane Camp. They're a nonprofit organization. They held camps for families every year. So, we'll be attending camp this July. It's for the entire family. You send your kid away to camp, and My family has benefited from this camp for the last few years. We've met some great family and friends through that. I say family because they've become my extended family. And, this Thursday I'm going to travel to the toy pit and meet Mick Foley again. Third time my family's gotten to see Mick, so, that'll be fun.
Right.
Giving them a little unintended plug, I guess. But,
No, that's okay. That's absolutely all right. That's what we have you on here for, to tell stories and give as many plugs as you want.
Well.
Oh gosh. Well, first and foremost, before I kind of throw it out there, thank you, Greg, for coming on here, talking to us, and giving us over an hour of your time just to talk about IPW and everything in between. So definitely, we're very great. Appreciate you coming on here and just honestly giving us your time. It's been amazing.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And I have more stories to tell. We can do this again sometime. And I try to keep involved with some of the other groups. So, if you ever find yourself on a boring night that you need somebody, give me a call, because I'm sure we can talk some more. I can give you my opinion on everything except for what they're doing with Bray Wyatt right now, because I have no idea what that was.
Yeah, I saw that, and I have more questions than answers, but you know what? I'm gonna let it ride out, see what happens.
I have a feeling it's going to turn out good, just because he's that talented.
Right.
But, man, that was weird.
Yes, it was. And I think definitely Dave will probably take you up on that offer. We'll probably have you back on here because, storytelling is what we're all about, and you know what? We love stories. So, on that note,
all right.
I will let you go since it is, 10 o'clock at night. But thank you very much, Greg, for coming on here. And everybody out there who is perhaps listening to the Dave Dynasty Show, go ahead and go on to, you said Smart Mark, right? That's where you have the...
Smart Mark Video, yes.
Yeah, Smart Mark Video. Go on there and check out IPW. Go ahead and search them up on YouTube. You're definitely going to be surprised with all the stuff that you see from them, and you can kind of relive the good old days with them. And of course, as always, for everybody out there, support independent wrestling. It is the lifeblood of wrestling. Thank you again, Greg, for coming on here. And we'll probably have to catch up with you, Greg, again in the future. But yeah, thank you so much, and you stay safe there, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, like I said, it's my pleasure, and I predict this will be the lowest rated show you've ever had.
If you are looking for the best books, DVDs, and posters on classic wrestling nostalgia, then you want to visit crowbarpress.com. There are literally dozens of titles there, including biographies of the likes of Bruiser Brody, Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff, and of course, Dick the Bruiser, as we've spoke about here on the Dave Dynasty Show. You want to visit crowbarpress.com for all of your classic wrestling nostalgia needs. Again, that is crowbarpress.com. All right, and we're back on the Dave Dynasty Show. This is Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining us once again this week. I know we had that week gap in there, actually about a week and a half gap in there. We apologize for that, but we are back. Next week we have a very cool episode. We have what will be our first watch-along episode. It's going to be very simple. We're going to pick an episode of Midwest Wrestling TV from the past, and we're going to tell you when to hit play on that. It'll be available on YouTube. We'll tell you when to hit play, you watch it, and as you watch it, you'll get to hear us talk about it. And my guest on the first, we'll have different guests on these when we do these. My first guest will be the one and only Mrs. Dynasty. You guys hear me talk about her all the time on the line, and she's going to be the first guest to do the watch along with me for the first episode. So watch for that next week. And I'd also like to do in that episode a Q&A. I'd like to answer your questions. I got a few in now, but hit me up on social media and let me know your questions. It can be about anything. It does not have to be wrestling related. Whatever you want to hear, whatever you want to know. It's your chance to pick my brain, but I do warn you that can be a scary place to go. While we're doing some plugs here, make sure you check out powerslam.tv and use the promo code Dynasty and get a month free. They have over 100 independent promotions and over 4,000 hours of quality content on there. And you get a month free by using the promo code Dynasty. So go check them out. And as I said earlier, we will be June 22nd in Muncie, Indiana for Delaware County Championship Wrestling. More information coming online for that. Whichever way you listen to us, whatever platform you use, we are available on all the podcast platforms. Make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave us a rating and review, but please make sure you share the episode, share the post, share anything we put out there on social media. We do appreciate that. As you heard earlier in the little ad, you can check out DaveDynasty.com. That's the central hub for everything we do. Make sure you support us. PayPal.me/TheDaveDynasty for single contributions, and Patreon.com/TheDaveDynasty for ongoing monthly contributions. Everything helps, so get out there and give. Or you can go to ProWrestlingTees.com/TheDaveDynasty and buy a shirt. That helps us as well. So that's it. We're going to wrap it for this week. Like I said, next week we will have the Q&A episode and the watch along. So that should be fun. You guys have been asking me to do this for a long time, and we are going to dive in and do it. Should be a good time. So check that out next week. But until then, whatever you do and wherever you go, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.